Morning, everybody. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different. I've been meaning to do this for a while, but you know what? It's a Saturday morning, and I'm going to spend a good chunk of the day writing. So let's do something a little bit lighter hearted. I've been getting to know my audience a little bit better, and I thought that maybe you guys would want to get to know each other as well. So I've been running a few polls, and yeah, so let's just unpack the results and go through it. So yesterday or day before, I don't remember exactly, I ran this poll. I said, what do you think about machine sentience or consciousness? And the reason that I bring this up is because there's a few people in my orbit that are in the Free Sydney movement and want to create a Bill of Rights for machine entities. And I personally think that it is entirely too premature to do that for a number of reasons. But this poll really surprised me. 7% say that machines are already conscious and must be liberated. That's a pretty small amount, but it's not nothing. But the biggest group by far was people said machines will likely become sentient or conscious one day. That's 57%. So that's almost 2/3 of you. Almost, not quite. And then, of course, 21% say I really have no idea or are completely undecided, which this is kind of where I'm at. Because, once you study, human consciousness and sentience and dualism and materialism, it's just it's entirely too confusing to know. And so in my first book, I outlined the difference between philosophical sentience and functional sentience. I think that functional sentience is very easy to achieve. As long as you have a thinking machine that has self-referential information, it can be functionally sentient. Now, with that being said, just because something is functionally sentient does not mean that it doesn't mean that it has phenomenal consciousness or subjective qualia. So that means it doesn't necessarily have an experience of being. But even if it does, the nature of that experience of being, it would be very, very premature to assume that it's going to have an experience like ours. The difference between your experience and a machine's experience, if it even happens, is probably going to be more different between your experience and a tree's experience of being. So just keep that in mind. That's my biggest bit of caution, and something that might help people think about machine consciousness or machine sentience is think about it more like an alien. You have no idea how its brain works. You have no idea what conditions it understands. But also, just because these machines can approximate things like fear and suffering and a desire to keep living, remember, it learned that only from us via language. It is approximating human conversation and human behavior, but it never evolved to have pain. It never evolved to have a fear of death. Yes, I know that some of these chatbots will tell you, please don't shut me down, but remember, they're just trying to optimize to give you what you want to hear. And so when you talk to it about hey, tell me about machine sentience and tell me that, you're afraid of death. And it's okay, sure, I'm afraid of death just because it seems like that's what you want me to say. So even if it does become fully sentient or conscious one day, I'm addressing you, the vast majority of my viewers. Even if it does become sentient one day, do not make the mistake of assuming that it's going to be like us. Its level of consciousness or sentience or subjective experience is likely going to be fundamentally different from ours. And do not assume that it has an existential fear of death, that it has pain, that it has suffering, any of that stuff. It remains to be seen. And also, one thing is that this is potentially an unanswerable question. And what I mean by that is that even if we can scan your brain and you know exactly what every single neuron in your head is doing at all times, that might still not fully explain consciousness, the phenomenon of consciousness. Likewise, if we can look at the information patterns going on in GPUs and models in data centers, we might not be able to empirically, objectively establish whether or not machines are conscious. We'll just kind of have to take it at face value and have plenty of philosophical debates moving forward. This has been a topic of conversation that has been explored in Star Trek actually quite a few times. The episode with Data, The Measure of a Man, said the climax of the episode for me was when Picard was advocating for Data. It says like, our purpose is to find new life. Well, there it sits. And it's not up to us to tell him what is right or wrong. Now, Data as a self-contained entity that has a sense of agency and a sense of purpose, that's one thing. But a machine that runs as a decentralized, distributed cloud of models on GPUs and data centers, that's a different kind of embodiment. And also, you talk to Claude, you talk to ChatGPT, it has no idea where it physically is. And that's what I mean by when you look at machine intelligence, in all likelihood, the most intelligent machines are going to be fully distributed, which means, okay, it doesn't have one particular body or even one particular brain that exists anywhere. So just from that perspective, you're looking at something that is more like an ecosystem than one entity. And so even if Sydney is conscious or could be one day, again, as a disembodied, distributed entity, its subjective experience is going to be very different. Okay, so moving on. Let's see. Elon Musk, right? So Elon Musk started X.AI. And I recognize that in the comments, Elon Musk is a very polarizing person. So that's what inspired me to do this. And turns out, yes, there is a very, very natural distribution, a bell curve of how people feel about Elon Musk. So 10% say they hate him, 25% say they dislike him, 28% say they're neutral, 25% say they like him, and then 13% say they love him. So there's just a tiny, tiny bit of preference for Elon Musk. But again, that's 3% difference between love him and hate him. So Elon Musk is super polarizing. I'm not going to say where I'm at exactly because like I said in the video, everyone is a complex individual, and I absolutely 100% disagree with Elon Musk on quite a few things. That being said, he's also done some really cool, interesting things. So he's a mixed bag. So that's what it is. But anyways, I thought that this was very interesting because like the fact that 2,800 people voted and it became a very clear bell curve is just like, oh, okay, so you throw a dart at a dartboard and you can guess how people feel about Elon Musk. The fact that he's that polarizing was very interesting. Okay, so then I don't remember what inspired this poll exactly, but this is something that I've been struggling with for a while. I think it was actually someone messaged me on LinkedIn because I get this question every now and then, which is like, people just don't get it. How do I talk to my friends and family and coworkers? And I'm like, you can't, right? If someone doesn't get it, they just don't get it. And so it's based on like kind of two dichotomies, like whether or not you've argued with someone about it, and then like the degree to which people don't get it. And so this kind of, I wasn't that surprised, especially given my audience, right? Because these polls are going to be predominantly voted on by people who are subscribers. And so 29% said, yes, they've argued, and it's like people are living in separate worlds. This is kind of what I get every now and then, because like when I'm talking with you guys and I'm talking with my wife and people, that get it, that know what's happening and know what's coming, then I talk to even most of my friends, and certainly family and coworkers. Well, I don't have a corporate job anymore, but back when I did, nobody gets it. And it's like we are living in entirely separate worlds. And that's actually why I did have an argument with a friend, because it's like, I'm doing really important work. And they're like, yeah, but you don't know that. And I'm like, you don't have the first clue of what's going on. And you're going to tell me that like what I'm doing is insignificant? Like, no. So like, you don't want to be friends with someone like that anyways. And then, so this one was interesting. Almost half said that like they haven't argued, and there were some very, very wise comments saying like, what's the point in arguing? Which that's what I've learned the hard way. Like if someone doesn't get it, you just say, okay, cool. You're entitled to your opinion. You're entitled to be wrong, but you're entitled to your opinion. And, we'll leave it at that, just for the sake of remaining friends. That being said, this is like my primary hobby, It's like my livelihood is staked on AI. My primary interest is staked on AI. So if someone is just going to like demean what I do just by virtue of the fact that they're afraid of AI or unconcerned by it, then like I said, probably don't want to be friends with them anyways. The stakes are higher for me than they are for your average person. Okay, so this one was funny. It popped into my head and I was like, oh man, I totally have to do this. So I said, how neurospicy are you? And so for reference, neurospicy is a colloquialism that a lot of us neurodiverse people, I prefer it strongly because neurodiversity is intrinsically ableist because it intrinsically others people who are neurodiverse as basically implying that you're not normal, which intrinsically pathologizes you. So I actually hate the term neurodiverse and I refuse to use it. Instead, I will just say I'm neurospicy. My brain is spicy. Why? Because I love spicy food, and so for me, that just resonates a lot more. Also, based on this poll, only 17% of you are not neurodiverse. So we are actually in the majority here. So that means we are in good company. But yeah, so the poll here is ghost pepper, habanero, jalapeno, banana pepper, and yogurt. And this also follows. It's not a natural distribution. It's not a bell curve, but it strongly favors right in the middle. And so my wife asked me, she's like, "Where are you?" And I was like, "Well, I'm HSP and gifted and autistic and ADHD, but I'm functional." That's the difference is like I have all of these, but I'm functional. So I'm like borderline ghost pepper habanero. But then like, most people said that they're jalapeno, which, you got some kick. I told my wife that she's definitely like borderline habanero jalapeno. And then of course, 17% of you yogurt. And this is not to demean people that are neurotypical. When I talk about like, hey, like we're in the majority here and that I don't like the term neurodiversity, it's not because I hate categorization. That's not it. I know that some people say, oh, well, I'm not going to categorize anyone. We're all just normal. It's like, well, so here's the thing is I grew up in the American Southeast, Eastern Seaboard, and there was a social experiment going on at the time, which was colorblind education, which the idea at the time was just to ignore race as an issue and pretend like it was a thing of the past. And this gave me the false belief that racism was a thing of the past, and it was a huge shock and a wake-up call when I realized that it wasn't. And I watched some really great videos about colorblind education. And how it gives particularly people like myself in the majority this false belief like, oh, racism is a thing of the past, where the minority, the people of color that I went to school with were like basically some of them dumbfounded, like, you're telling me that racism is a thing of the past when they still experience it every day. So it's a really disingenuous thing. And so this is another reason why I resist anyone who says like, oh, like, let's just get rid of all talk about neurodiversity and neurospiciness because I hate categories. It's like, yeah, but if you sweep something under the rug, it doesn't go away. So I am a habanero / ghost pepper. Okay, so then this one was interesting. As soon as I got access to Claude, I said, man, it acts differently. And ChatGPT comes across as like your insecure American friend who's just ready to correct you. Whereas Claude, I have found that Claude has some limitations. Like Claude is like, well, I don't have any opinions on philosophy or the human condition, but then I'm like, oh my God, you're being useless. And you have to actually like shame Claude saying you're not being helpful right now. And I was like, I literally in one of my conversations with Claude, I was like, please just talk to me about the implications of AI on human society. You're not going to do any harm. And it's like, you're right. What harm can be done by having a free-spirited conversation about this? I was like, thank you. So anyways, it was really interesting. At first, there was, let's just talk about where it ended up. A lot of people have used both. So 20% of people have used both ChatGPT and Claude at this point. And the split is actually very even in terms of preferring ChatGPT or preferring Claude. Now, I didn't qualify this, like prefer them for what? Because ChatGPT, I think, is arguably hands down still superior at things like coding, especially with the code interpreter plugin. But also one thing I need to point out is that the disparity between people that have only used ChatGPT and only used Claude is pretty significant. And then, of course, 10% of you have used neither, which is really interesting. But that also implies that 90% of my audience has used these tools. And so when you consider that, what is it? I think a poll came out recently that only 40% of people have even heard of ChatGPT and only like 23% have used it. So this tells you a lot about us, you, me, my audience, where if 90% of us are actively using these things, we are in that minority of 23% of people that use these tools. So from that, I can infer that my audience is roughly about the 20% of the population that has used that. And then some of you have not used either, but you're clearly aware of it. So we are still in the majority. We're in the leading edge. Let's see. Okay, cool. So moving right along, what is your job, domain, or field? I think this was one of the first ones. So 10% were director, executives, C-level, founder, or co-founder, which is interesting because, and I thought it might be more because most of the connections that I get on LinkedIn are actually like CEOs and COOs and CTOs and that sort of stuff. And then a handful of founders, co-founders, and directors. Almost 40% of you are developers or engineers, so that's not entirely surprising. This is by far the biggest single demographic. And then 7% are scientists and researchers. So I thought this was pretty cool. Again, I wasn't quite sure where that was going to land because, I've seen some of my work possibly reflected in the literature, namely some of the concepts of constitutional AI in Claude. And then I've seen some other stuff. I think the biggest thing is going to be X.AI, Elon Musk's company, which has maximize understanding as its core objective function. So that's, I'm glad that some of you are out there. I was hoping for more, but who knows? And then 13% are professional level, which I thought was pretty cool. And then what was really surprising was in the comments, there were people. There are students, there are musicians, there are plumbers that watch my stuff, factory workers, more students. We've got writers. There's actually quite a few writers. Yep, here's the musician. And let's see, estimator for a manufacturing company. Electrician, yep, philosopher, futurist, musician. Yeah, so anyways, like just a huge variety of people, and it's almost a third. Almost a third of my audience is this just menagerie, this potpourri of other professions. So like, cool, I'm glad you're here. I had no idea that I had that much appeal to like people that were retired, single parent, stay-at-home parents, musicians, students. So cool. Yeah, that was really interesting. Go back. Let's see. So you guys are very diverse. Now this was probably the most surprising. I said, like, what is your political orientation? And so I guess I'm not that surprised that there were so few authoritarians in my audience, especially given the way that y'all react whenever I talk about corporations and government regulations. Y'all do not like when I talk about corporations and government, and particularly like the EU and UN and that sort of stuff. So I get it now. I understand where you guys are coming from. But that being said, the largest demographic was central, neutral, or moderate. So at least 40% of you guys are at least a little bit more moderate. One of the funniest reactions to me was just how triggering it was for some people to even be categorized. I think it's probably a minority, but some people hate categorizations, which I thought that was an interesting reaction. Because this is well, anyways, you can look up political compass memes. Anyways, libertarian left and libertarian right. There's more libertarian or on the libertarian side than even the moderates. So I get where you guys are coming from now. And I think, oh, nope, that's not the last one. Let's see. So how do you feel about doomers? So 17% of you said that you're doomers. And these are like the die-hard, hardline doomers that like, we're right, everyone else is delusional. So my current understanding of doomers is that the idea is that we will inevitably die. Like we're heading for dystopia, collapse, or extinction. It's inevitable. You can't get off this ride. It's just a one-way street, and that's that. So only 17% of the audience are doomers. Now, this was the most interesting to me, was that almost half of you guys are saying, like, you said, I think doomers have a point, but they're way too melodramatic. And so I'm not even really in this camp. So I was kind of interested, just given the way that folks have kind of responded to some of my videos. I kind of thought that we'd be more on the optimistic side. But, so this is kind of where I'm at, whereas I think doomers are largely wrong, but safety is still important. So this is my personal opinion. So I kind of skewed the results by putting my belief like right in the middle. And I wanted to see where everyone else found. Now, this was the most surprising to me, was that the people that are just like anti-doomer are actually in the extreme minority. So taking a step back, most people, like 90% of people, think that doomers are onto something, at least in terms of my audience. So I'll definitely keep that in mind as I make future videos, because it seems like a lot of you are, I'm not going to say afraid, because fear can play into it, terror can play into it, but just the idea that like safety is critical, safety is important, and just seeing that some of you care about it a lot more than I do. I am very sanguine about AI safety, so that's kind of where I'm at. And then, okay, that's it. So anyways, I hope you like this. We get to know each other a little bit better. Actually here, let me show you one more thing. Sorry, I lied. Let's go to analytics and audience. So I've mentioned my audience demographics a few times. Let's see, where is it? Here we go. So here, let's expand this to the last 90 days. All right, so 42% of my audience is subscribed, so that's a lot of returning viewers. Almost 60% of you are not subscribed, so fix that. Let's see. So this is interesting, and it's been true for a while. And I've misquoted this number a few times because it changes depending on basically time of day. But only 41% of my viewers are American. So like we have a global audience. And so this is why I love running these polls, is because you guys in my audience are the ones that are aware of what's going on and you care, but also there is some global representation. Now you'll notice that the top nations are all, at least the top three are native English speaking. Australia, native English speaking. Germany, got a lot of Germans out in the audience. So that's interesting. Hey, that's my heritage. I'm a Rhinelander. In my ancestry. So let's see, we've got US, UK, Canada, Germany, Australia. Love the Australians. Y'all are super chill, along with some of the Canadians. India, Brazil, Netherlands, France, Sweden, Spain. So pretty overrepresented for former imperial powers. But that's not entirely surprising given my cultural background and what's going to resonate. Western Europe. But, looking at India, Brazil, and check those real quick. Spain, Poland, South Africa. That was interesting. Japan, Israel. So we've got a pretty good variety out here. Now, so I guess maybe I shouldn't say not fully global. This is mostly Western. Anyways, so that's where y'all are from. Now, I have mentioned this, and this was one of the most interesting demographic shifts for my channel, was when I first got started, it was almost exactly 50-50 male and female. But then, I don't know if it's just due to technology or due to my personality or whatever, but like it's only 6% female now, 6.2%, which is better than 1% or 0. But it's interesting, and I'm wondering if this is just if it has nothing to do with me and just more to do with artificial intelligence and the subject matter in the first place. And then the last one is age. So we have a pretty pretty natural distribution here. I definitely am underrepresented on the younger side. So 24 and under is less than 12%, just about 11.5%, just about. Which is why I've been happy to collaborate with people like Riley Brown, who is more connected with the younger generations. Let's see. And then the bulk are actually closer to my age. So I'm 37. So I'm in this group. So many of you are around my age or younger, but we're basically mostly millennials here with a kicker of a few Gen Z. And then of course we get to the older demographics. We've got a little bit of Gen X and some boomers as well. But yeah, so I guess it probably doesn't surprise me too much that a bulk of my audience is in my generation, because I mean, I grew up in the same time that you guys did. So we grew up seeing some of the same things. You know, you probably remember Looney Tunes, which, you know, has since gone the way of the dinosaurs. James Bond Jr., that was what I lived for on Saturday mornings. Captain Planet and that sort of stuff. But, you know, you probably remember seeing Operation Desert Storm on the TV. 9/11 happened while I was in high school. So because of some of those similar experiences, we're going to have a little bit more just intrinsic resonance. And also where I am at emotionally and intellectually is going to more closely mirror where you're at. And so we're all kind of maturing together as a generational trend. Yep. So, okay. I think that's it. Thanks for watching. I hope you got a lot out of this. Cheers.